It is Thursday, and that means Caroline Heldman, professor of critical theory and social justice at Occidental College. She's here to break down the week's political headlines, and they've been bombshells. Good morning, Caroline.
Good morning, Giselle. Wonderful to see you.
Wonderful to see you just a week and so before Christmas. All right, let's unpack everything. These were bombshell revelations from the January 6th committee. Mark Meadows could be the first current or former House member to be held in contempt of Congress in nearly 200 years. How significant?
This is highly significant. If you recall, Mark Meadows originally did cooperate with the committee. He turned over a treasure trove now of 9,000 or so documents, but is refusing to appear. So the House has voted, the committee first, and then the House voted to hold him in contempt. And I do expect that the Department of Justice will likely issue an indictment against him, as they did with Steve Bannon, who's refusing to participate with the Select Committee.
Yeah, but this is different than Steve Bannon, no?
It's absolutely different. So Bannon was not part of the White House core. He wasn't working in the White House at the time. Mark Meadows was. And not only that, Mark Meadows was with the president during the violent insurrection on January 6th. So these emails that that we have now seen publicly, some of them read publicly, are quite shocking. And they indicate that he played a major role and that Donald Trump knew what was happening on the ground. He was being told by many different people in many different parts, including members of Congress.
All right, let's unpack this, because I think this is really, really important. So some of the emails suggest that Mark Meadows not only was texting with sitting lawmakers, but he also said that the National Guard would protect Donald Trump supporters at the Capitol. Now, what does this suggest to you, especially since the National Guard failed to respond quickly to the crisis?
Well, Giselle, we do know that whatever happened with the National Guard, we don't know, right? Somebody is lying about this. And this particular piece of information, the idea, this message from Mark Meadows that the National Guard would be protecting Trump people, is shocking, in that it indicates that there was some coordination, perhaps, in the fact that there was a 2-hour delay, over a 2-hour delay in responding to this. The committee is trying to get to the bottom of that. We also know that, as you pointed out, Mark Meadows is communicating with members of Congress. Trump's inner circle was coordinating, or at least communicating, with the organizers of the rally. Also, major, right-wing news commentators had access to the president during this time. And of course, Donald Trump Jr. was texting and saying, please do something about this. So just the people who were communicating with Mark Meadows, which means they were communicating with Trump because he was right there with him and he's his chief of staff. These revelations indicate a much higher level of knowledge about what was happening, and a higher level, perhaps, of coordination in terms of what was happening at the Capitol.
I know. Let's stay with the National Guard for just a second, because this is like these are all the makings of a military coup. If this was really what was being coordinated behind the scenes. If it turns out, Caroline, that the National Guard leadership and the Oval Office made a coordinated effort not to respond or to engage and defend Trump supporters who are being violent at the Capitol, what are the legal ramifications?
Well, likely none. And I say this because had the violent insurrectionists been able to stop the election, we would be having a very different conversation. We would be looking at the role of the military in that. Now, the president does actually have the authority to direct the military in this regard. So had they actually stopped the certification of the election, we would be having a different conversation. But unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, because I think someone should be held accountable, there will likely not be accountability for Trump along these lines, because the only sort of really form of accountability might be something like treason, right? But that's something that would be a stretch in this situation. And even if he were indicted for treason, let's say for trying to use the military to intervene in the election, even if that were the case, and it went to a trial, he would have to admit it on the stand, or there would have to be 2 witnesses. So the standards and the definition for treason is narrow, and the standards are very high. So all of this to say, there will likely be no accountability, even if that were the case.
Wow. Well, the contempt of Congress charges have been sent to the Justice Department. So what's going to happen?
Well, if you look at the pattern with Steve Bannon, it took the Department of Justice about 2 weeks to issue an indictment. They issued an indictment against Bannon. He's facing perhaps up to 2 years in prison and a $200,000 fine for 2 counts for not providing documents and not showing up. I would expect that for Meadows, he's facing the 1 count of not showing up. And I do expect that the DOJ will indict because of the significance of what Mark Meadows knows and can provide.
All right, let's turn to the Build Back Better plan. Joe Manchin is threatening to hold up this legislation. What does it mean when one person can hold up an entire agenda?
Well, senators have this power through the filibuster, and I think it's important to note the filibuster was not in the Constitution initially. It wouldn't actually be used until 1837, but it gives one member the power to really talk down a bill. And it was put into place in order to encourage bipartisanship. It is being used in a very different way now. And Joe Manchin, if you recall, said, if this plan shrinks from $3 trillion down to $1.75 trillion, I will sign. I'll put my name on it. I'll pass it. I'll vote for it. He is now reneged on that, and the sticking point appears to be the child tax credit. He wants it zeroed out, whereas the Democrats and the Biden administration want the child tax credit in place. It affects 35 million poor families with children. So that's the sticking point, and it is likely that this will drag out, that Manchin will be successful in stopping the passage of the Build Back Better bill.
Do you think the American public is really aware of this threat to our democracy, Caroline, or is it hyperbole?
Well, I think in terms of the states, the 19 states that have passed laws that make it easier to overturn an election, I don't think most Americans are aware of the scope of it and the threat of it. I will say that if the 2020 election happened today, it is much more likely that Donald Trump would have had his way in terms of overturning the election. And we need to be alarmed about that because these state laws are having significant federal effects in terms of eroding our democracy and free and fair elections.
Wow, we are really in uncharted territory. Caroline Heldman is always on every Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us and lending us your insight and perspective. Have a great Thursday. And you're looking at a gorgeous start to this new day, Friday's Eve, everyone. Boy, look what God hath done.